Thank you, Your Honor. May I?
Yes, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, Firefighter Nuttall.
Good afternoon, sir.
Nice to see you again.
You as well.
Before your testimony this morning, how many conversations had you had with any member of the prosecution team in anticipation of your testimony today?
I believe it was 3, sir.
When were those?
I could not give you dates off the top of my head.
Give me a time frame. Within the last 3 weeks, within the last 3 months, last 3 days?
Within the last 3 weeks, I believe one the week after that, and then one last night.
One?
Last night.
Last night. What you did discuss, let's take them in order. First of all, who did you meet with 3 weeks ago?
I met with Mr. Brennan and his staff.
And when you say his staff, who else?
I honestly couldn't tell you, sir.
Mr. Lally?
No. No, sir.
Male, female?
One female, one, I believe, state trooper.
Okay. Had you ever met State Trooper Tully previously?
Yes, sir. Actually, I believe that was him.
It was State Trooper Tully?
Yes, sir.
Whom you've met with several times, correct?
Prior to that, I believe only once or twice.
He was the one that he has formally interviewed you previously, correct?
I believe he arranged the meetings with Mr. Brennan, but
Okay.
Beyond that, I can't speak to.
What did y'all discuss 3 weeks ago?
The first meeting, going in order, it was mostly just kind of an introduction. I had not met Mr. Brennan yet. I really didn't know him. So it was mostly that, and then just kind of seeing where we were at with testimony, going over previous testimony and in that sort of realm.
Prior to today, how many times have you testified under oath concerning the incident on January 29th, 2022?
Once at a grand jury hearing and once last year.
All right. As a matter of fact, last year in this courtroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you look over your testimony at the grand jury 3 weeks ago during that meeting?
No, sir.
What about the testimony from last year?
We did go over the testimony from last year. Yes, sir.
Were there any issues that Mr. Brennan or anybody else in that meeting brought up concerning any of your testimony?
There was just a question of how many times the I hit him came up. It was 3 times.
And were you advised that that's not what you said at your testimony last year?
No,
sir. 2 times?
What was that?
You said it was 2 times last year?
I honestly can't recall, sir.
Okay, but you just saw that, or you just read that and went over that 3 weeks ago.
I believe so, sir, yeah.
But you can't remember, as you sit here today, just 3 weeks ago, what y'all discussed in terms of how many times you previously testified that you heard the phrase, I hit him.
So previously testified possibly to 2, but it was 3.
Okay, your memory is clearer now than it was, for instance, a year ago when you testified.
Repeat that?
Sure. Your memory is clearer now, as you sit here, that it was 3 times you heard that, than it was a year ago when you testified that it was 2 times.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does your memory get better with time generally? Your memory. I'm not talking about the royal you. I'm talking about you.
In certain settings, I mean, there are certain things about different aspects that I recall better than others.
Okay. And does your memory tend to get better, or does it fade over time? That's my question.
It can fade over time, but it depends on the context.
But in this case, you're telling this jury that your memory is better now than it was a year ago when you testified about the exact same circumstance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You then met about a week after that, which would be 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Who'd you meet with then?
The same group.
And what did you discuss at that meeting?
Again, just prior testimony. And that was really the gist of it.
And tell me the specifics of the prior testimony that you...
Again, it was the how many times we had talked about saying, I hit him. Again, it was 3 times. And then there was also the video that was just played for me.
If I'll take the video in just a second. If y'all had met 3 weeks ago and you indicated to Mr. Brennan that it was actually 3 times, not 2 times that you heard the I hit him, why did you need to discuss it again a week later to verify that 3 times versus 2 times?
Not sure, sir. That was just the way that the conversation went. And I just, again, repeated what I said and what I remember from that morning.
Well, tell me about that conversation. Did Mr. Brennan say anything like, well, are you really sure that she said it 3 times?
It was that morning what was said to you. And I said, I hit him. That was how it went that morning, and that was how I remember it.
Okay. And did Mr. Brennan say, well, that's not consistent with how you've testified previously concerning the number of times you heard the I hit him phrase?
Yes, sir.
He did say that.
He wanted to, he acknowledged that I had said it twice. However, again, as I mentioned, it was said 3 times to me.
So now you do remember last year that you only said it, you only said that it was repeated twice.
One more
Correct?
time, sir.
So now you do recall that last year when you testified, it was inconsistent with how you're testifying today. Let me put it that way. Correct?
I believe I said I hit him twice on the stand last year.
Right. And if you're saying I hit him 3 times instead of twice, that firefighter Nuttall is inconsistent with your testimony today. Correct? You
Yes,
agree
sir,
with that?
but that is how it went that morning, though, sir.
Okay, that's not my question. Let me see if I can do it again. So I'm asking you, if you testified last year
Yes, sir.
that you heard the phrase twice, and now a year goes by and you're testifying in front of this jury this year that you heard it 3 times, those 2 statements are inconsistent with one another, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you talk at the meeting 2 weeks ago about any other inconsistencies with your testimony?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Well, you were there, and you
No.
say not to my knowledge, meaning,
No, sir. We did not.
okay. So it was just about the number of times that you heard the phrase, I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You cleared that up in the 2 meetings, 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago. What did you talk about last night?
Mostly just making sure that everything was as it had been. I mean, and by that, I mean, it was 3 times, and that we were continuously making sure that everything was the way that it had happened that morning.
Everything was the way that Mr. Brennan wanted it to be.
No, sir. The way that it was in, I remember it, and I recall it happening.
Okay. So he asked you 3 weeks ago about how many times you heard that phrase.
Yes, sir.
You changed your testimony at that time and said it was 3 times instead of 2 times. We agree on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then he called you a week later, or met with you a week later, and again reiterated, making sure you stick with that testimony that it's 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then last night he called you just to make sure one more time you're going to stick with that testimony that it was 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Hold on just a second. May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. And when you talked last night, did you assure Mr. Brennan, nope, 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 when we come in tomorrow, I'm certainly going to say it was 3 times, not 2 times?
No, sir. I told him I would tell my recollection of that morning.
Okay. And did you tell him that what my recollection is, I'm going to tell the jurors it was 3 times that I heard it?
That was what I heard.
Okay. Did you tell him that's what you were going to say today?
No, sir.
You didn't?
I told him I was going to tell him what I remembered from that morning.
Which was what?
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Which is how many times?
3 times, sir.
And that's inconsistent with what?
I believe a year ago.
Okay. Now, you also talked about, I want to get back to the other thing that you talked about. You said that at some point, either in the meeting 3 weeks ago, the meeting 2 weeks ago, or the meeting last night, you were shown a video.
Yes, sir.
Which one of those meetings were you shown a video?
I believe the second one.
Okay. Were you shown the entire video?
No, sir.
Just the clip that we saw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did y'all talk about in relation to that video?
Mostly nailing down who was who in that video.
Okay.
Being the other personnel on scene, where I was, and that was about it.
He showed you the clip that you showed. He showed you the clip that you just seen on direct examination, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell him where you were?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Brennan ask you to define exactly where it was that you supposedly heard this phrase, I hit him?
No, I was able to give that to him, sir.
Okay. And what you told him was that moment when you see my client walk over sort of to the left of the screen, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you defined, that's the point at which she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Yes, sir.
And that's in response to your question. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. You asked, do you know him?
Yes, sir.
And she repeated the phrase 3 times, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Correct.
Okay. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Did Mr. Brennan ask anything else about that specific video?
No, like I said, he kind of asked me to point out different individuals on the scene, and that was really the extent of it.
You saw that same video last year when you testified, correct?
No, sir.
You didn't see it last year?
Not to my knowledge, no.
In preparation for your testimony last year?
I did not.
Did you see it before your grand jury testimony?
No, sir.
Okay, so this is the first time that you've seen it.
Yes, sir.
And you were able to establish for Mr. Brennan exactly when it was that you believe you heard the statement based on your view about 2 weeks ago of that video.
No, that was the way that I remember it
Right.
that
Not a
morning.
trick question. My question is much more simple. You were able to establish after been 3.5 years now exactly where you were and where Miss Reed was and who else was around at the time that you believe you heard those three statements in order. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified last year as well that there is a normal protocol for removing clothing from a patient, and it's essential to just discard it and get it away from the patient so that you can concentrate on the life-saving measures that you're undertaking, correct?
Yes, sir.
That could be done you said in the ambulance, it could be done in a hospital, it could be done in situ, out there in the field, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the point is you want to get as much clothing off of the person as possible so that you can assess that person's physiology.
Yes, sir.
There's not really a lot of care taken to preserve the clothing from an evidentiary standpoint, in your view, correct?
And we're trained to try and, just to take example of a shooting, try not to cut through the entrance wound of the clothing.
Fair enough, fair enough. I mean, when you're literally trying to save someone's life, your job is to get the clothing off and get it out of the way.
Yes, sir.
You're not sticking it in an evidence bag and sealing the evidence bag, things of that nature.
No, sir.
So it might end up on the ground.
Yes.
Right? Might end up with some debris on it.
Yep.
Might end up in the floor of the ambulance.
Yes, sir.
Could end up in the floor of the hospital or on the floor of the hospital. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if it's tossed in the floor of the ambulance, the clothing may well pick up debris from the ambulance.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Or the debris from the floor of the hospital or wherever. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified previously at the grand jury in April of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir. I believe so, sir.
Okay. So this happened in January of 2022, that same year in the springtime. You testified at the grand jury, April 20th, I think it was.
Yes, sir.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, I want to take you back to that testimony for a second. You testified at that hearing that Mr. O'Keefe was, quote, dressed appropriately for the weather. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. It was obviously well below freezing at that time.
Yes.
That night that you responded.
It was.
We've just seen the video. It looks cold as hell, right?
It was chilly.
All right. The wind was howling.
Yep.
It was snowing. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that John O'Keefe, quote, had a heavy coat on and possibly 2 other layers of clothing.
Yes, sir.
In April 2024, you reiterated your very specific memory of and you even called it a puffy heavy coat that he was wearing, which was then removed so that you could assess his injuries, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Not to get too colloquial, but a puffy coat is like, it's got down and stuff in it, right?
Correct.
Looks kind of like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pretty distinctive article of clothing.
Yep.
And you testified last year that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing that clothing, which you had to remove or somebody had to remove in order for him to be properly assessed.
I did testify that way. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that your memory of that big, heavy winter coat was as clear as your memory of other specifics in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
I asked you that exact question, didn't I?
You did.
And I said, your memory of him having that big, puffy coat on, which stood out in your mind, was just as clear as the other specifics that you've testified to about the case.
Yes, sir.
About that night. And turns out you were completely wrong about his clothing, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, he wasn't wearing a coat at all.
No, sir.
He wasn't wearing a winter coat, correct?
Nope.
He wasn't wearing a heavy winter coat, correct?
Correct.
And he wasn't wearing a puffy, heavy winter coat.
He was not.
Yet you testified that he was wearing all of that, and that was clear in your mind at the time.
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Brennan bring that up during the meeting 3 weeks ago?
He asked about what I had meant when I said appropriately dressed.
So you did talk about something other than just the I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
When I asked what y'all talked about, why didn't you tell us that?
To be perfectly honest, sir, I did not remember until right now.
So your memory is fading even after 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Got it. The fact is, well, let me ask you a different question. Did Mr. Brennan tell you what Mr. O'Keefe was actually wearing?
No, sir. Actually, I believe you did.
Last year, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
It's a short sleeve T-shirt and a little thin wool hoodie, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wasn't wearing a hat.
No, sir.
Wasn't wearing, as a matter of fact, didn't even have a shoe on, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
And obviously, goes without saying, but I'm going to ask it anyway, that's not being appropriately dressed for the winter.
No, no, sir.
You indicated that you did notice certain injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's person.
Sir.
Once you got him back in the ambulance, obviously it's lighter, meaning brighter lights. You have more equipment in the back of the ambulance. You can better assess somebody's well-being, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated you had a, quote, much better picture of what we were dealing with, correct?
Yes.
You noticed once in the back of the ambulance that he had trauma to the right side of his head.
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, when you were pointing at it, I'm doing that on purpose because you pointed to the right side of your sort of forehead above your right eyebrow, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The majority or the worst injury that Mr. O'Keefe suffered was actually to the back of his head, which you indicated, you noted was quite matted with blood, correct?
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about the injury to the right side of his head as distinct from the back of the head injury for just a second. Before I get to that in detail, let me ask you, because I just sort of want to cover the bases. You noted the back of the head injury, correct? Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
You also noted the front right side of the head above the right eye, correct?
We did.
You noted some injury to his eyes. They looked blackened.
Yes, sir.
But primarily the right eye was blackened?
Yep.
And there was a golf ball size egg, I think you put it, over his right eye, often called a hematoma.
Correct.
And you also noted when you got his shirt off that he had scratches along the right side of his arm. Is that right?
Sir.
You indicated on direct examination today that you believe those scratches ended where? Meaning from top to bottom? And I'm not using anatomically correct
No.
language. So from shoulder to wrist, where were the scratches that you noted?
There were several. As I noted, they were on his right humerus area.
Tell me what a humerus is.
They right on.
Biceps.
Right about here.
Okay.
No, a little further, like between where your bicep and your tricep kind of meet. Right,
Got it.
Right about in there.
Okay. And what did the scratches look like?
They were deep. Infamously referred to them as furrows. But they were quite deep. You could tell that there had been some material removed.
Okay. Material meaning skin and flesh.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Some biological material. Mm-hmm. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
And were they parallel? Meaning they were going in the same direction?
Yes.
Were there any scratches below the elbow?
There were. Yes, there were. They were not as significant as the ones in the upper arm, but they were noted.
Okay. And those were parallel as well?
Yes, sir.
And they looked like scratches to you. That's how you described them?
They did.
Last year, when you described those scratches, you curled your fingers up, exposing sort of the nails, and drew it across your biceps. Is that what you were using to describe what the sort of scratches looked like?
I just kind of used that as a landmark, to be honest with you, sir. It was just kind of how I quantified it in my mind.
Okay. But what you did was you did this motion.
Yes, sir.
As you said, there were furrows. And remember, there was an embarrassing moment for me.
Both of us, sir.
I couldn't understand the word furrow because of the accent, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the hematoma above the right eye for a second. That's basically damage to subdural blood vessels that causes acute swelling, right?
Correct.
And a very common cause of a hematoma over one's eye could be being hit or punched in the face. We talked about that.
There could be several causes for hematoma, such as that.
Obviously. I mean, it could be a golf club, a baseball bat, or it could be a fist.
It could be.
Okay. We talked about that last year. I asked you if the injuries that you saw on Mr. O'Keefe's face, including the laceration over his right eye, was consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation, and you said it was consistent with a physical altercation as well.
Excuse me?
Objection to referring to past testimony before a question is asked.
So sustained.
Sure. Do you remember a laceration, in addition to the hematoma, about a 0.8 centimeter laceration over his right eye?
I do.
Tell me what I'm using a word that maybe not everybody understands. I didn't understand it when we first started this thing. What's a laceration? What's the difference between that and a cut?
A laceration is they're basically the same thing. A laceration is just a deep cut.
Okay. So it's a parting of the skin.
Correct.
In other words, where the skin separates.
Yes.
And that can be from blunt force trauma, meaning something hits it rather than cuts it.
You can get
Sustained.
What are some of the causes of lacerations?
You can get a laceration, as you noted, blunt force, but you can also get a laceration from a slashing movement, from a stabbing. I mean, that is still a laceration.
What about a hematoma?
That is primarily caused by blunt force trauma.
Right. And the hematoma and the laceration were right next to each other, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicated last year, or let me ask you this way. Is that consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
I could not say, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
Well, last year, you indicate you can't answer that. Last year, you did answer it, didn't you?
Objection.
So I need to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please. Mr. Nuttall, we are going to let you take a break. We'll be back in this after.